The U.S. Ghost Army, Operation Mirage Part 1, the Illusionist Regiment in late spring 1944. The air was thick with anticipation. Everyone knew the invasion of Europe was inevitable, just a matter of time and place. In one of the classified offices of the Office of Strategic Services OSS, the atmosphere was more reminiscent of an art director's meeting than a military planning session. Colonel Harry Talmadge, a former theater director and now an officer with unspecified responsibilities, stood before a board covered with sketches and diagrams. Seated before him were unusual soldiers. A thin young man with an EZL art school graduate, Billy Thornton, a stocky, technical-looking guy constantly tweaking his turntable, sound engineer Jack Salmon Mullen, and a charismatic, dark-haired man with expressive gestures, Broadway actor David Phillips. "Gentlemen," Talmadge began, his voice sounding as if he were introducing a new play. "War is a performance, the largest and most expensive ever staged, and you and I will be its directors, set designers, and sound engineers. Our task is to make the enemy believe what isn't there." He clicked his pointer, and a diagram appeared on the board, reminiscent of the organizational chart of a theater rather than a military unit. "Meet the 23rd Special Forces Headquarters, or, as I call it, the Illusionist Regiment. Our personnel, the 603rd Camouflage Battalion, that's you, the artists and designers. Your weapons are inflatable Sherman tanks, rubber trucks, plywood airplanes, and miles of painted tarpaulin. Your task is to create a visual illusion." Billy Thornton raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Sir, are you saying we're going to inflate rubber tanks while the other guys are fighting the real thing?" "Lieutenant," Talmadge retorted, "one of your inflatable Shermans, spotted by a German Focke-Wulf reconnaissance aircraft, could divert an artillery barrage intended for a real tank, thereby saving the lives of 20 guys. Isn't that what real war is?" He turned his gaze to Jack Mullen. "The 313th Special Forces Signal Company is your kingdom. Sounder, your weapons are giant tape recorders with 500-watt amplifiers. You record sounds, the rumble of tracks, the roar of engines, the shouts of sergeants, the clanking of mess tins. You create the oral illusion of an entire division setting up camp at night." Jack nodded in agreement. A spark of engineering excitement lit in his eyes. "We've already experimented with mounted speakers on Jeeps, sir. The effect is stunning. From a mile away, you can't tell it from a real convoy. And finally," Talmadge looked at David Phillips, "the 406th Combat Team, actors, impersonators, linguists. You'll be working behind enemy lines, in pubs and markets. Your job is to spread rumors, pose as soldiers from real, truly dangerous divisions, and engage in seemingly meaningless conversations with the locals, knowing that among them are Abwehr informants. You create a narrative, a legend." David smiled. For him, this was the role of a lifetime. "I understand, sir. We're playing the roles of soldiers who must play the roles of other soldiers." "Exactly," Talmadge exclaimed. "We're not enforcers. We're the brains. Our battle doesn't take place on the battlefield, but here," he tapped his temple, "and here," he gestured to his ears and eyes, "we'll deceive radar, mislead intelligence, and fool the Reich's finest generals. We're a ghost, appearing to the Germans where they expect it and vanishing when they try to strike." Their training was unlike any other. They deployed entire tank battalions in a matter of hours. Billy and his fellow artists, armed with airbrushes and brushes, transformed shapeless rubber bags into perfect replicas of armored vehicles, adding dirt, dust, and signs of wear to deceive the keen eyes of German reconnaissance pilots. They learned to light fires underneath them to expand the rubber and allow the tank to breathe, creating the illusion of a freshly shut-off engine. Jack and his sound engineers spent days in the fields, recording and mixing sounds. They created entire soundtracks of military life, night movement of an armored column, unloading artillery, construction of a pontoon bridge. They calculated the acoustics of the terrain to ensure the sound propagated as realistically as possible, and David and the actors studied not only the regulations and insignia of various divisions, but also the mannerisms, jargon, and habits of real soldiers. They rehearsed scenes in pubs, where a drunken sergeant let slip about the impending offensive of the well-known 6th Panzer Division. Soon after the Normandy landings, they received their first order. The real divisions needed to covertly transfer forces for a breakout. The Ghost's task was to create the appearance that a powerful strike force was concentrating in a completely different location. They worked for 3 days without sleep. An entire tank depot sprang up in the field, Fake radio transmissions began to play. Rear echelon troops appeared in the nearest town, eagerly inquiring about routes for heavy vehicles, and it worked. The Germans shifted the direction of their artillery fire. Their aircraft made several fruitless sorties bombing empty fields. The real offensive was accomplished with minimal losses. That night, looking at the stars above a French village, Billy Thornton, stained not with blood but with green and brown paint, understood one simple thing. Their war was silent, invisible, and yielded no trophies. But somewhere out there, on the real front, dozens, maybe hundreds of men were alive only because he, a former art student, knew how to draw a shadow on the rubber side of an inflatable tank. It was a strange war, but it was their war. Part 2. Operation Leeds Ghost, October 1944. Luxembourg. A cold autumn rain drenched the fields and copses, turning the roads into mudflows. For the Ghost Army, this was both a curse and a blessing. A curse because inflating and camouflaging their vehicles in the sticky, cold mud was excruciatingly difficult. A blessing because low clouds and fog hid them from aerial reconnaissance. They received an order that could save thousands of lives. The real U.S. Ninth Army was preparing to assault a key city on the outskirts of Germany. The Germans expected an attack from the south. The Ghost's mission was to convince them that the main attack was coming from the north. Near Liege, they were to impersonate the 30th Infantry Division, nicknamed Old Grumpy, a renowned, battle-hardened unit. Their division consisted of 1,100 men, several dozen real armored vehicles for authenticity, and hundreds of inflatable tanks and guns. They faced several real German divisions, including elite tank units. Billy Thornton, now a sergeant, commanded the armor deployment crew. His men, soaking wet in pitch darkness by the light of darkened headlights, pumped up giant rubber Sherman tanks. Each tank weighed about 90 pounds when folded and could be converted into a full-size vehicle. In 20 minutes, come on, hurry up, Billy hissed, helping to secure the camouflage net. Remember, a Focke-Wulf might come for us at dawn. He needs to see a division, not a pile of rubber. They worked like a well-oiled machine. Artists, armed with airbrushes, added highlights to wet steel, actually shiny rubber, painted shell marks, and splashed mud around. By morning, an entire tank battalion stood on the field, looking absolutely real from the air. Meanwhile, at the other end of their false front, Jack sound guy Mullins supervised the setup of his unique sound system. 2 jeeps with giant speakers on trailers were positioned at the edge of the forest. Engineers laid cables and checked amplifiers. Play track number 4. Night maneuvers of the motorized infantry. Jack commanded. The speakers blasted into the night. The muffled rumble of engines, the clanking of tracks, the shouts of officers, the scraping of metal. The sound, amplified to an incredible volume, carried for many kilometers. For any German observer saying a couple of miles away, this was irrefutable proof the Americans were moving equipment. Perfect, Jack muttered, checking the acoustic map. Now they won't sleep. They'll be wondering what we're up to. The most dangerous job fell to David Phillips and his team of actors. Under cover of darkness, they infiltrated German-held frontline villages. Disguised as soldiers of the 30th Division, they entered pubs where they were sure to be seen by locals, some of whom were informants. David, playing the role of a tired but combative captain, sat at the bar, ordered wine, and struck up casual conversations. Damn it, these redeployments again, he complained to the bartender, pretending to get drunk. We've been dragging our tanks from south to north for a whole week. They say Old Grumpy has some serious work ahead of us. I can't wait to get to those Krauts, his partners. Meanwhile, we're drunkenly arguing at the table about the merits of the new Shermans or let slip about the imminent arrival of artillery support. They left fixed staff documents on the tables, which they later panickedly searched for and scrawled their divisions insignia on the walls in chalk. It was a theater where the audience was Abwehr agents, and the success of a real offensive was the goal. The operation lasted 10 days. 10 days of nervous tension. German artillery periodically shelled their false positions. Several inflatable tanks were destroyed. Billy and his men repaired them at night, sealing the holes and painting over the bullets. One day, a German sniper took aim at Jack Mullen while he was checking a speaker. A bullet pierced the amplifier housing a meter away. It was the most acute moment of realization that their game could at any moment turn into a deadly reality. The Germans took the bait. Intelligence confirmed the enemy was shifting forces north, toward Liege. Their reserves were not directed where they had originally planned. When the order came to wind down the operation, the ghosts disappeared overnight. The rubber tanks deflated and were packed into trucks. The speakers fell silent. The actors took off their old grumpy uniforms. The field, still teeming with troops that morning, was deserted by dawn. The real Ninth Army struck from the south. The offensive was swift and successful. Resistance was much weaker than expected. Casualties were minimal. None of the soldiers leading the attack knew about the 1,100 men who, with their skill, had drawn off the German divisions. The Sovjetfront reports made no mention of the Ghost Army's great victory. Their triumph was silent and invisible. But, sitting in the truck taking them to their next mission, Billy, Jack, and David looked at each other silently. They heard no applause, but they saw the results of their work, and that was enough. They were ghosts, but their impact was palpable. They saved countless lives without firing a single shot. Part 3. The Last Illusion in Silent Glory Mark 1945. Germany. The war was on its last legs. But that didn't make it any less brutal. The German beast, cornered, fought back desperately. This was the most tense time for the Ghost Army. The closer they got to the Rhine, the more experienced and suspicious the German commanders became. Their illusions had to be flawless, their final, most grandiose performance was an operation to simulate a crossing of the Rhine. The real crossing was being prepared further south, near Oppenheim. The Ghost's task was to create the appearance that the main attack would be launched further north. Near Koblenz, the scale was unprecedented. They were to impersonate two entire divisions, the 30th and 79th. This meant hundreds of vehicles, thousands of tents, dozens of pontoon parks, and artillery batteries. Billy Thornton and his artists worked tirelessly. They set up entire villages with inflatable trucks, field kitchens with real smoke billowing from them, and command tents with lamps lit inside to cast shadows. They even created a fake first aid station with mannequins and bloody bandages. The attention to detail was phenomenal. Jack Mullen and his sound engineers staged their most ambitious concert. They broadcast the sounds of pontoon bridge construction, the clanking of winches, the splashing of oars, commands in an incomprehensible language specially recorded with an accent to imitate engineer units. At night, they broadcast the radio broadcasts of engineer battalions announcing their readiness to cross. It was a highly complex acoustic setup, designed to deceive not only the soldiers' ears, but also German sound reconnaissance equipment. David Phillips and his actors operated on the edge of deception. They appeared in Rhineland villages not yet occupied by the Allies, posing as advanced reconnaissance groups. They clumsily interrogated local mayors about the state of roads and crossings, implying that the main forces were following them. The risk of being captured and executed as spies was enormous. It was a gamble. The Germans, expecting the final blow, believed it. Their command began to amass reserves toward Koblenz, including units assigned to defend the actual crossing. German artillery shelled the empty banks where the ghosts were performing their show day and night. German aircraft bombed rubber rafts and plywood pontoons one night, watching through binoculars as German shells exploded among their inflatable Shermans. Billy Thornton experienced a strange feeling. It was akin to the satisfaction of an artist whose work had been noticed and appreciated, even at such a terrible cost. Every explosion wasted on a rubber doll never reached the real soldiers. The real crossing of the Rhine at Oppenheim took place almost without resistance. The bridge was captured so quickly that they didn't even have time to blow it up. The operation's success was stunning, and a significant part of the credit for this goes to the Ghost Army, which had misled the Germans. For them, the war ended as quietly as it had begun. In May 1945, they were simply disbanded. There were no parades, no awards. Their activities remained strictly classified for several decades. They returned to their peaceful lives, Billy to his studio, Jack to his record label, and David to Broadway. They signed a non-disclosure agreement and remained silent for many years. Their stories were not believed. Inflatable tanks, sound effects. What are you talking about? Was the usual reaction. It was only in the early 2000s that the top-secret classification was lifted, and the world learned of one of the most incredible chapters of World War II. Elderly, gray-haired men, former ghosts, were finally able to tell their children and grandchildren what they really did in that war. At one veterans reunion, Billy Thornton, already a renowned artist, said, "We didn't kill enemies. We saved friends. Our weapons were deceit, but the goal was honest. We left no graves behind, only legends. And, Perhaps this is the best monument to a soldier when your greatest contribution to victory is that you forced death to pass others by. They were artists, engineers, and actors forced by war to become soldiers, and they fought as best they could with colors, sounds, and words, creating ghosts more terrifying than any real division. Their story proved that sometimes the most powerful army is the one that doesn't actually exist.